So I wanted, before we get started, to let everyone know that I have a new podcast out, and it's called Meditations. If you like the Meditations segment of this current podcast, you'll like the Meditations podcast. It's nothing but 20 minutes of meditative sounds. And now, on with the podcast.
Americans love scenery. We want to see it all, from one coast to the next, Mount Rushmore down to the Everglades. So hop into a Chevy Malibu and take the scenic route. It's the car you knew America could build. There's a place where people count on friendships they can trace back generations, where they can count on the same stool at the coffee shop waiting for them every morning. This place is called Glen Ellen, and you can find it in every bottle of Glen Ellen wine. This is craft brewed Herman Joseph's, the smoothest, easiest drinking specialty beer in the entire solar system. And I believe you'll find drinkable in the dictionary right after don't order a beer you can't drink. Zoingo! Boingo! The freestyle pogo with more boing, more bounce. Bounce further, bounce higher with Zoingo Boingo. To see what makes Arrowhead Mountain Spring water different from those other waters, you have to go back to the source. And with Arrowhead, that means going back a little farther and longer than most. Between security challenged and security strengthened, there's one important word: how. And it is the how that makes all the difference to our nation and our world. Lockheed Martin. We never forget who we're working for. What makes Kraft Singles so good? 2 out of every 3 kids don't get the recommended amount of calcium. But with Kraft Singles, they get a good source of calcium and the taste they love. Kraft Singles. Magic every single time. Throw boring overboard with a new real meal from Long John Silver's. A meal worthy of a plate. Just $4.99. Only at Long John Silver's. We may not all be geniuses, but we can all do something smart. Introducing the Hyundai 199 Sonata Lease. It's a smart deal on a really smart car.
Can't fire a black person? How can you fire a black person? It's gonna be some shit, ain't it? It ain't never a good time to fire a black man. There's always gonna be some controversy. If you fire him in the morning, he got a problem with it. If you come walking in, hey, Bernie, before you punch in, can I talk to you? Yeah, what's the problem? We won't need you anymore. You let me come all the way down here for this bullshit, to tell me this bullshit? If you fire him at the end of the day, it's a goddamn problem. Bernie, can you come off it? Yeah, what's the problem? We don't need you no more. You let me work all motherfucking day, you gonna tell me?
Good morning. It's Tuesday, Trump Tuesday, August the 19th, and this is The True Conservative. Welcome to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there. I'm Ron, your host, and the only true conservative in the United States today. So today, after the Serenity Prayer and the patriotic song of the day, we will have Varney and Company, meditation, motivation, and Donald Trump. All that and more when I get back. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I should not change, the courage to change the things I should, and the wisdom to know the difference. Amen. Let's see, we got Mornings with Maria up first, and at the end of that, and then Varney and Company.
Families, more importantly. So anyway, a big show. You've got a big show coming up, The Fixer. We're going to keep watching you on Fox.
Tonight at 8 o'clock, there's, I think, a 5-hour marathon, so you'll see a bunch of episodes. It's all fun stuff.
You could fix anything in your life after that.
Yeah. Well, I need CQ. I need some CQ love. The intelligence from...
I'm still waiting for my tip on that one.
That's right.
Did we learn anything?
We learned there's a lot to learn about communication. I think we actually saw, talk about communication yesterday at the White House with the president and European leaders. I think that was a masterclass in how to bring people together.
Zelensky's suit.
And Zelensky, he thought about the nonverbals with his suit, and he got a big shout out from the president on that. So all good.
The president complimenting his outfit. Very important in business to come in the right clothing, attire.
That designer is very famous in Ukraine.
Yes.
I think they'll see a bump in sales.
Yeah,
today.
little military canvas suit.
Bump. They'll sell some jeans
well,
and some suits.
Absolute pleasure to have you both here. Thank you so much, Marco Simone. It's great to see you. We're going to watch you tonight. Brian Brenberg watching you tomorrow night. We're watching you too.
And Marcus is here noon to 2.
We'll be together.
Yeah.
I'm going to miss all of it. All right. David Asman, good morning, sir.
Good morning, Cheryl. Thank you very much. And good morning, everyone. I'm David Asman in for Stuart Varney today. We begin with a historic diplomatic breakthrough. President Trump meeting with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, along with 7 other European leaders. And now the president giving Fox details of his push for an even more ambitious goal, a face-to-face meeting between Vladimir Putin and Zelensky. He was actually working on it last evening. We got the details of that and of a trilateral summit that could also be on the horizon. Turning now to the markets, the Dow seems to be up right now. It's up about 89 points in pre-market activity. Both the S&P and the Nasdaq are down. The 10-year Treasury yield, if we can switch to that, is down just a tick to 4.32. The 2-year Treasury yield is just about flat. Bitcoin, well, that is trading now at $115,695, down over $1,000 right now. And we're watching Intel. The Wall Street Journal reporting that the White House is in talks with Intel to acquire a 10% stake in the company. What's that all about? And SoftBank actually announced it's going to be investing an extra $2 billion in the company on its own. On the show today, the mayor making waves. I'm talking about Dallas's Eric Johnson. A former Democrat turned Republican joins us live. Why he is inviting concerned New Yorkers to move to Texas and taking on New York mayor wannabe socialist Zoran Mamdani. Plus, did you ever dream of owning a Steinway piano? Well, the U.S. Forest Service might be standing in your way. And today we're going to be talking to the company that is the sole supplier of soundboards for the world's finest pianos and why they're having trouble. All that and much more Tuesday, August 19th, 2025.
And that was Assman and Company. Nonprofit news now. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now, Jeffrey Mead.
Our ancestors wasn't asking for handouts. They were asking for equal opportunity. And we have equal opportunity in this country. We had a black president, just in case you didn't know. We had a black president and we had a black vice president. I think she was black. They said she was black. I don't know. So
like he said, our ancestors were not asking for handouts. They were asking for equal opportunity, and we have it. And it's a beautiful thing. But many of us still choose to live in the past, focus on the past, and complain more about racism, the white man, and history than actually taking advantage of the opportunities that are right in front of our faces. I would be embarrassed to be in 2025 still primarily complaining about history and the white man. That is lame. Like he said, we quite literally have had a black president. Barack Obama never would have been president if white people did not vote him into office. More than 50% of his voters in both elections were white people. I think our ancestors will be rolling over in their graves, looking at all the opportunity we have and how much we complain and whine about. It's pathetic. There's no place in the world with more opportunity than the United States of America. I don't care what skin color you are. Black Americans as a whole spend too much time talking about racism, the white man, and the past, and not enough time talking about personal decisions and accountability. Why are a bunch of children being born into single-father homes? Decision-making, personal accountability from both parents. Your life is nothing more than an accumulation of the decisions that you've made up until this point. So if you stack poor decision on top of poor decision on top of poor decision, what are you going to get? A poor result. Many of these people on the left talk about humans as if we're all just widgets that do the exact same thing and think the exact same ways. There is a problem with good decision-making and personal accountability amongst the majority of Black Americans. And the first step to solving a problem is actually admitting that we have one. Like I said before, our ancestors would be rolling over in their graves. There's too much opportunity in the United States of America today for you to still be complaining and whining about the white man.
And that was Jeffrey Mead on his Instagram account. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now, Candice.
Ah oui, j'ai oublié de vous dire, très important. Tous ceux qui ont fait miel cannelle, parce que j'ai reçu des messages, qui ont dit j'ai reçu miel cannelle, j'ai gagné au casino, j'ai gagné machin. Je vous préviens, vous ne donnez pas aux autistes, au silence des justes. Les 18 minimum que j'ai demandé, je coupe le fluide. Pourquoi? Parce que miel cannelle vient du canal autistique, j'ai déjà dit. Je vous donne pas miel cannelle pour que vous ne donnez pas aux autistes. C'est celui qui fait l'égoïste, qui dit j'ai reçu, mais j'attends fin du mois et compagnie pour donner. Terminato, comme on dit. Donc c'est moi qui retire le fluide et en plus je vous fais perdre ce que vous avez gagné. Je suis tolérance zéro avec l'autisme, vous le savez très bien. Surtout que c'est moi qui vous ai donné par l'œil la connaissance. Le rituel miel cannelle à toute balle. D'ailleurs ici en Grèce il y a une cannelle exceptionnelle que nous allons ramener. Donc je vous préviens, le silencedesjustes.fr. Miel cannelle est gratuit bien sûr le rituel. Tous les jours sauf le samedi. Que le matin, 3, 8, 7, vous savez ce que c'est. Et on n'oublie pas de donner aux autistes, sinon... Ah oui, j'ai oublié de vous dire, très important.
And that was Candice. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, because I like the energy, motivation.
Many dreams die while suffering. I'm talking about emotionally, spiritually. It could be a relationship. When you're suffering, you give up on the very things that you wanted the most.
Life is going to beat you upside your head. Before you blow up, life will strip you to the core.
What makes you get up when you fall down? What makes your mentality change if there's a great situation or there's a bad situation? How do you dictate that based on the level of pain?
I need you to evaluate yourself and ask yourself the question, how are you wired? When you have a trial or a tribulation, how are you wired? Does it break you? Your problem is your pain has identified you. Your pain has destroyed you.
All of us will hit the wall. That wall shocked some people. That wall knocked the life out of some people. It didn't work out for them. They hit the wall and they turned around. But there's some small number. They decide, wait a minute, I'm supposed to be over there. This kind of person refuses to be denied.
I'm wired differently. I get excited about no. I love no. I love it. It turns me on. No, Eric, I'll be back. I'll be stronger when I come back.
This person doesn't care about the pain because this person knows something. There's no gain without pain. So this person comes back anyhow, again and again. And if you keep on hitting that wall, here's what happens to you. You will have an incredible breakthrough. And it's as if the universe says, let's help him out. I admire that kind of tenacity. Let's give her a hand. Let's send her assistance, send her resources. It will come out of nowhere. As you're working times with tears falling down your face. And you'll look back on the times and you will cherish those times.
When your mind knows it's not going to quit, your body will adapt to whatever is in front of it. What happens is you have all these voices that are telling you you're f***ed up and this is going to be hard. But for some reason, you put so much practice into you that you can ignore every one of them that are telling you you're not going to f***ing make it. And still be able to f***ing make it. Because you have put the practice in that you know this is the process. It's such a daunting task that all the
voices are saying no. But you still have the conviction that I know I can do this.
When you get knocked down, and you're going to get knocked down, when you run into some roadblocks, and you're going to run into them, but you can always be able to bring yourself back in, knowing if someone has done it, it's possible that I can do it.
Some of you have been knocked out by life, and you got up and saw the blood. He hit me. Sometimes in life, you have to hit back. You got knocked on the ground. You had absolutely nothing to do with that, and I'm not blaming you for that. But if I come back a week later, you still on the ground. If I come back a year later, you still on the ground, that's your fault. If you get knocked down, there's nothing you can do about it. But getting back up has every single thing to do with you, and you will promise me that from this day forward, you will not be defeated. I just love myself enough not to be trapped in the same doggone spot for the rest of my life. I love myself too much. So what makes E.T. different than everybody else? Every year I just kept going. I kept going, and I kept going, and I kept saying one day gonna be my day. But you know what I'm not gonna do? I'm not gonna quit in the process. I'm not gonna give up. I'm not gonna give in. And the problem with you, you've not recycled your pain. You're still living off talent. And I challenge you, average people live off talents. Phenomenal people live off efforts. Recycle your pain. Get something from it. You already in pain. Use it. Do something with it. Allow it to take you to the next level. Allow your pain to push you to greatness.
Success isn't a straight line. It's a maze. And when you think you figure that maze out, you hit a wall. And you got to turn around and start again. Everybody's got a plan so they can get in the mouth. So when your plan fails, when you get knocked down the canvas, when everything falls apart in your life and your plan is up, what the are you going to do? There's only one motherfucking option. Stay fucking hard.
And I'm not here because I'm the best. I'm here because they tried to break me and they couldn't. Oh, I'm wired differently. I didn't start crying. I didn't say, why me? I'm doing good to the world. I'm not hurting anybody. Why me? I'm wired differently. I can. I will. I must. We turn tragedy into triumph. That's what lions do. It does not make a difference what the circumstance is. Lions don't cry. Lions don't give up. Lions don't quit. Lions hunt. That's what we do for a living. So do me a favor. From this point forward, execution is worship. I don't make the big bucks because I talk. I make the big bucks because I execute.
And that's a little bit of motivation. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, so that we don't get burned out, a little bit of meditation.
Hey, my name's Chibs Okereke, and welcome to today's meditation. Today we're practicing a short vagus nerve reset. Whether you're feeling anxious, frustrated, or just a little bit scattered, this is your invitation to pause, reset, and gently reconnect. Taking a moment now to settle into a comfortable position. If it feels okay, you might like to close your eyes, and if not, simply letting them soften or stay slightly open. The vagus nerve helps to regulate our stress response, and it responds beautifully to slow, conscious breathing. Let's begin by bringing gentle awareness to the breath. Noticing the inhale and the exhale. Allowing the breath to flow naturally. Trusting that your body knows exactly what to do. Now, if the mind begins to wander, that's perfectly natural. We might simply acknowledge the thought and then gently guide our awareness back to the rhythm of the breath. Back to this inhale and back to this exhale. And now I invite you to allow the awareness of breath to drift gently into the background. And let's begin to explore the body, one area at a time. Let's begin with the feet, noticing any sensations there. Tingling, warmth, heaviness, stillness. As we breathe in, imagining the breath reaching all the way down to the feet. And as we breathe out, allowing a sense of release, of grounding. Bringing gentle awareness to the legs now. The calves, the shins, the thighs. Now the hips and pelvis, an area that can quietly hold tension. With each breath, offering this space some softness. Bringing attention to the spine, the lower, middle, and upper back. The vagus nerve flows through this central line, connecting body and mind. You might imagine the breath traveling along the spine, soothing, settling, unwinding. And now the shoulders. Breathing in and breathing out. Turning awareness to the neck and jaw. You might notice the jaw softening, the neck releasing. And now gently expanding our awareness to the entire body. Noticing the stillness, the warmth. Feeling supported, connected, safe. As you move through your day, perhaps take a moment to reflect. What's one small way you can remind your nervous system that you're safe today? I'm Chibzo Karake. Thanks for joining me today. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Judge Janine.
Hi, everyone. It's Judge Janine. I just wanted to let you know here from the United States Attorney's Office in D.C. that an individual by the name of Nathalie Rose Jones is now in custody, charged with 2 federal crimes for knowingly and willfully threatening to take the life of the President of the United States. She did come from New York to Washington, D.C., and she has been threatening and calling for the removal of the president, and even worse, as she got to D.C., her threats were on Facebook and Instagram, and she continued to call the president a terrorist and was working to have him eliminated. She is now in custody. She will be prosecuted to the full extent of the law. Make no mistake about that.
And that was Judge Janine. Back in a minute. Thank you now, George Meloni.
Io penso che ci sia un problema di compatibilità tra la cultura islamica o certa interpretazione della cultura islamica e i diritti e i valori della nostra civiltà. A me non sfugge che la gran parte dei centri culturali islamici in Italia sono finanziati dall'Arabia Saudita e l'Arabia Saudita è una nazione che a casa sua applica la Sharia e Sharia significa lapidazione per l'adulterio, pena di morte per apostasia, pena di morte per omosessualità. Credo che queste questioni vadano poste, che non vuol dire generalizzare sull'Islam, vuol dire porre il problema che c'è in atto un processo di islamizzazione dell'Europa che è molto distante dai valori della nostra civiltà. E io penso che ci sia un problema di compatibilità tra la cultura islamica o certa interpretazione della cultura islamica e i diritti e i valori della nostra civiltà. A me non sfugge che la gran parte dei centri culturali islamici in Italia sono finanziati dall'Arabia Saudita e l'Arabia Saudita è una nazione che a casa sua applica la Sharia e Sharia significa lapidazione per l'adulterio, pena di morte per apostasia, pena di morte per omosessualità. Credo che queste questioni vadano poste, che non vuol dire generalizzare sull'Islam, vuol dire porre il problema che c'è in atto un processo di islamizzazione dell'Europa che è molto distante dai valori della nostra civiltà. E io penso che ci sia un problema di compatibilità tra la cultura.
And that was Georgia Meloni. Back in a minute. Thank you. So for President Trump, I'm finding a hard time finding interviews on YouTube and other sources. So you wouldn't think it'd be that difficult, but it is. So I've got a book by him, The Art of the Deal, and so I'm going to read chapter 1, Dealing, and it's called A Week in the Life, and I'm going to be reading for Monday. I don't do it for the money. I've got enough, much more than I'll ever need. I do it to do it. Deals are my art form. Other people paint beautifully on canvas or write wonderful poetry. I like making deals, preferably big deals. That's how I get my kicks. Most people are surprised by the way I work. I play it very loose. I don't carry a briefcase. I try not to schedule too many meetings. I leave my door open. You can't be imaginative or entrepreneurial if you got too much structure. I prefer to come to work each day and just see what develops. There's no typical week in my life. I wake up most mornings very early, around 6, and spend the first hour or so of each day reading the morning newspapers. I usually arrive at my office by 9, and I get on the phone. There's rarely a day with fewer than 50 calls, and often it runs to over 100. In between, I have at least a dozen meetings. The majority occur on the spur of the moment, and a few of them last longer than 15 minutes. I rarely stop for lunch. I leave my office by 6:30, but I frequently make calls from home until midnight and all weekend long. It never stops, and I wouldn't have it any other way. I try to learn from the past, but I plan for the future by focusing exclusively on the present. That's where the fun is. And if it can't be fun, what's the point? Monday, 9 a.m. My first call is to Alan Ace Greenberg on the trading floor of Bear Stearns, a major Wall Street investment banking firm. Alan is the CEO of Bear Stearns. He's been my investment banker for the past 5 years, and he's the best there is. 2 weeks ago, we began buying stock in Holiday Inns. It was selling in the 50s. As of this morning, Alan tells me I own just over 1 million shares, or slightly more than 4% of the company. The stock closed Friday at $65 a share, mostly, Alan says, because word is out on the street that I've been a big buyer, and there's speculation I'm planning a run at the company. The truth is I'm keeping my options open. I may ultimately go for control of Holiday, which I think is somewhat undervalued. At the current stock price, I could get control for less than $2 billion. Holiday's 3 casino hotels could be worth nearly that much, and the company owns another 300,000 hotel rooms besides. A second option, if the stock price goes high enough, is to sell my stake and take a very nice profit. If I did that today, I'd already be up about $7 million. The third possibility is that Holiday may eventually offer to buy back my shares at a premium, simply to get rid of me. If the premium is big enough, I'll sell. In any case, I enjoy seeing the lengths to which bad managements go to preserve what they call their independence, which really just means their jobs. 9:30 a.m. Abraham Hirschfeld calls me looking for advice. Abe is a successful real estate developer, but he wants to be a politician. Unfortunately for Abe, he's a far better developer than politician. This fall, Abe tried to run for lieutenant governor against Governor Cuomo's hand-picked candidate, Stan Lundeen. Cuomo led a court fight to get Hirschfeld off the ballot on technical grounds, and sure enough, halfway into the campaign, the court ruled Hirschfeld out. Abe knows I'm friendly with the governor, and he wants my advice now on whether he should endorse Cuomo or switch parties and endorse Cuomo's opponent. I tell him it's a no-contest question. Stick with a winner, and a good guy at that. We set a meeting for Thursday. 10 a.m., I called Don Imus to thank him. Imus has one of the most successful radio shows in the United States on WNBC, and he's been helping to raise money for the Annabelle Hill Fund. I'm amazed at how this has snowballed into such a media event. It began last week when I saw a national news report by Tom Brokaw about this adorable little lady from Georgia, Mrs. Hill, who was trying to save her farm from being foreclosed. Her 67-year-old husband had committed suicide a few weeks earlier, hoping his life insurance would save the farm, which had been in the family for generations. But the insurance proceeds weren't nearly enough. It was a very sad situation, and I was moved. Here were people who'd worked very hard and honestly their whole lives only to see it all crumble before them. To me, it just seemed wrong. Through NBC, I was put in touch with a wonderful guy from Georgia named Frank Argenbright, who'd become very involved in trying to help Mrs. Hill. Frank directed me to the bank that held Mrs. Hill's mortgage. The next morning, I called and got some vice president on the line. I explained that I was a businessman from New York and that I was interested in helping Mrs. Hill. He told me he was sorry, but that it was too late. They were going to auction off the farm, he said, and nothing or no one is going to stop it. That really got me going. I said to the guy, quote, "You listen to me. If you do foreclose, I'll personally bring a lawsuit for murder against you and your bank on the grounds that you harassed Mrs. Hill's husband to his death," unquote. All of a sudden, the bank officer sounded very nervous and said he'd get right back to me. Sometimes it pays to be a little wild. An hour later, I got a call back from the banker, and he said, "Don't worry, we're going to work it out, Mr. Trump." Mrs. Hill and Frank Argenbright told the media, and the next thing I knew, it was the lead story on the network news. By the end of the week, we'd raised $40,000. Imus alone raised almost $20,000 by appealing to his listeners. As a Christmas present to Mrs. Hill and her family, we've scheduled a mortgage-burning ceremony for Christmas Eve in the atrium of Trump Tower. By then, I'm confident we'll have raised all the money. I've promised Mrs. Hill that if we haven't, I'll make up the difference. I tell Imus he's the greatest, and I invite him to be my guest one day next week at the tennis matches at the U.S. Open. I have a courtside box, and I used to go myself almost every day. Now I'm so busy, I mostly just send my friends. 11:15 a.m. Harry Usher, the commissioner of the United States Football League, calls. Last month, the jury in the antitrust suit we brought against the National Football League ruled that the NFL was a monopoly, but awarded us only token damages of $1. I've already let the better players on my team, the New Jersey Generals, sign with the NFL, but the ruling was ridiculous. We argue about the approach we should take. I want to be more aggressive. What worries me, I say to Harry, is that no one is pushing hard enough on an appeal. 12 noon. Gary Schoenfeld, head of the Schubert Organization, the biggest Broadway theater owners, calls to recommend a woman for a job as an office administrator. He tells me the woman specifically wants to work for Donald Trump, and I say, she's crazy, but I'll be happy to see her. We talk a little bit about the theater business, and I tell Jerry I'm about to take my kids to see Cats, one of his shows, for a second time. He asks if I'm getting my tickets through his office. I tell him that I don't like to do that sort of thing. Don't be silly, he says. We have a woman here whose job it is to handle tickets for our friends. Here's her number. Don't hesitate to call. It's a nice gesture from a very nice guy. 1:15 p.m. Anthony Gleedman stops by to discuss the Woolman Rink proposal. Gleedman was housing commissioner under Ed Koch. At the time, we fought a lot, and even though I ended up beating him in court, I always thought he was bright. I don't hold it against people that they have opposed me. I'm just looking to hire the best talent wherever I can find it. Tony's been helping me to coordinate the rebuilding of the Woolman skating rink in Central Park. a project the city failed at so miserably for 7 years. In June, I offered to do the job myself. Now, we're ahead of schedule, and Tony tells me that he's set up a press conference for Thursday to celebrate the last important step in construction, pouring the concrete. It doesn't sound like much of a news event to me, and I ask him if anyone is likely to show up. He says at least a dozen news organizations have RSVP'd yes. So much for my news judgment. 2 p.m. I get deposed in a lawsuit we've brought against a contractor on Trump Tower. Halfway into the job, we had to fire the company for total incompetence, and we're suing for damages. I hate lawsuits and depositions, but the fact is that if you're right, you got to take a stand, or people will walk all over you. In any case, there's no way I could avoid depositions, even if I never brought a lawsuit myself. Nowadays, if your name is Donald Trump, everyone in the world seems to want to sue you. 3 p.m. I asked Norma Futterer, my executive assistant and the person who keeps my life organized, to bring me lunch, a can of tomato juice. I rarely go out because mostly it's a waste of time. 3:15. I put in a call to Sir Charles Goldstein. He's out, and I leave a message. He's a successful real estate attorney, but not one of my favorites. I'm pretty sure Charlie Goldstein is from the Bronx, but he's a very pompous guy and has a tendency to act like royalty, so I call him Sir Charles. Over the weekend, I hear that Lee Iacocca has hired Sir Charles to represent him on a deal in Palm Beach, where Lee and I intend to be partners. Lee had no way of knowing about my past experience with Sir Charles. A while back, I was in the middle of making a deal with a guy who needed an attorney, and I recommended Sir Charles. The next thing I knew, Sir Charles was recommending to his client that he not make the deal with me. I couldn't believe it. This deal is to buy 2 condominium towers in the Palm Beach area. I own a house in Palm Beach, a spectacular place called Mar-a-Lago, and one day last winter when I was down for the weekend, I went out to have lunch with some friends. On the way, a pair of beautiful gleaming white towers caught my eye. I made a couple of calls. It turned out they'd been built for about $120 million, and a major New York bank had just foreclosed on the developers. The next thing I knew, I was making a deal to buy the project for $40 million. A mutual friend, William Fugazi, first mentioned that Lee and I should do a real estate deal together. I think Lee's an extraordinary businessman who's done wonders in turning Chrysler around, and I also like him a great deal personally. So one thing led to another, and we began talking about the towers. It's a substantial investment, and I'm not certain Lee is absolutely sure yet that he wants to go forward. If that's the case, it occurs to me he's done the perfect thing by hiring an attorney I don't like. And that's precisely what I intend to tell Sir Charles when he calls me back. 3:30 p.m. I call my sister Marianne Berry to discuss a recent decision in a lawsuit we are contesting in Atlantic City. Marianne is a federal court judge in New Jersey, and her husband John is a talented attorney I have used on many occasions. Can you believe they ruled against us? I asked her. Marianne is very smart. She obviously knows a lot more about the law than I do, and she says surprised as I am. I tell her that I've arranged to have all the materials from the case sent to John immediately because I want him to handle the appeal. 4 p.m. I go to our conference room to look at slides of potential Christmas decorations for the atrium in Trump Tower. The spectacular 6-story marble atrium has become one of the leading tourist attractions in New York City. More than 100,000 people a week come from all over the world to see it and shop in it. And it's now a symbol of the Trump organization. That's why I get involved in details like what Christmas decorations we should use. I don't like most of what I'm shown. Finally, I see a huge and magnificent gold wreath for the entrance to the building and decide we should use just that. Sometimes, not often, but sometimes less is more. 4:30 p.m., Nicholas Reeves, a New Jersey attorney who handled the licensing of both my Atlantic City casinos, calls to say he's about to leave for Sydney, Australia to pursue a deal I'm considering. He tells me it's a 24-hour flight, and I tell him I'm very glad he's going instead of me. The deal, however, may be worth the trip. The government of New South Wales is in the midst of choosing a company to build and operate what they envision as the world's largest casino. We're a front-runner for the job, and Nick is going over to meet with the key government people. He tells me he'll call from Australia as soon as he has any news. 5:15 p.m. I call Henry Candice, the NBC executive in charge of choosing a new site for the network's headquarters. We've been courting NBC for more than a year, trying to get them to move to our West Side Yard site. 78 acres along the Hudson River that I bought a year ago and on which I've announced plans to build the world's tallest building. I know Henry's just been shown our latest plans for the site, and I'm following up. I mentioned that Bloomingdale's is dying to become the anchor store in our shopping center, which will give it real prestige. I also tell him the city seems very excited about our latest plans. Then I say we expect to get our preliminary approvals in the next several months. Candice seems enthusiastic. Before I get off, I also put in a plug for NBC's locating its offices in the world's tallest building. Think about it, I say. It's the ultimate symbol. 5:45, my 9-year-old son Donnie calls to ask when I'll be home. I always take calls from my kids, no matter what I'm doing. I have 2 others, Ivanka 6 and Eric 3. As they get older, being a father gets easier. I adore them all, but I've never been great at playing with toy trucks and dolls. Now, though, Donnie is beginning to get interested in buildings and real estate and sports, and that's great. I tell Donnie I'll be home as soon as I can, but he insists on a time. Perhaps he's got my genes. The kid won't take no for an answer. 6:30 p.m., after several more calls, I leave the office and take the elevator upstairs to my apartment in the residential part of Trump Tower. Of course, I have a tendency to make a few more calls when I get home. And that was Monday from the book, The Art of the Deal by Donald J. Trump. Back in a minute. Thank you. This is Ron, your host and the only true conservative in the United States today, bidding adios to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there and reminding you that atheism doesn't exist.